Hey everybody, video part 3 here of the Blueberry project. So this is going to be going really slow. We just got a bunch of really big projects in the shop, so I'm having to spend more time on those than obviously on this thing. So went in and threw together some bolts, and I got this thing sitting together. So these aren't the bolts I'll be ending up using, but at least I sized them. So these are M6s, and then these I'm going to do rivets, and then these are M4s. I've ordered in some nice looking hardware for these, so these will look more appropriate. These are supposed to be countersunk, and these, well, I figured I'd go with a low profile like button head or something, but I'm happy with how this came out. So now we're going to work on getting all of the center console stuff to fit. I've ordered in a couple extra types of weather stripping. I normally keep a bunch of different types on shelf, but you know, we use it for customer cars. So I ordered some stuff in. We'll get some of that center console stuff taken care of, and then I'll worry about lining up some holes in this thing to riv nut it to the center console at the end of the, you know, the transmission tunnel. Got back my aluminum valve cover from powder coating. Looks really nice. It's the same color texture as the intake manifold, so that'll also look really nice. This one gave me the most trouble out of all the aluminum valve covers I've had to do thus far, because not only did the VVT gasket not fit, but the cam sensor didn't fit either, so I had to open up both of those. Now, that being said, on the other side, I have the most bolts out of any of the valve covers I've done before that didn't break. So I replaced those out. They're M4 bolts, so I put them back with these nice, pretty Allen-headed ones. And also, I chose to take a risk and go ahead and use the included gasket. It actually is pretty cool. It is it's 3 layers on these, so 1, 2, 3, and then on the outer one it's 2 layers. It also fits really nicely. Better than the Felpro OEM ones, Felpro Oreo OEM ones. So hopefully that gives us better seal. I don't know. I figured I'd give it a shot. Worst case, I just pull it back off and I put on another one. But the thing is, I didn't have to cut that one up like I did the Felpro. If you've seen my other video, then you know what I'm talking about. If you want to know more about this, then go find my other video on how to put in an aluminum valve cover. Meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and install this on the car using the bolts included as well. Valve cover is successfully installed. And that's all for now. So I just got off the phone with McLeod, since they have been kind enough to assist me with tech stuff in the past. So since I didn't measure the flywheel before I installed it into the car, I called them and I got a dimension. So they said that the flywheel off of that EcoBoost kit is 12.051 from tip to tip of the teeth. So I took a measurement off of this one. This is a motor we just got in. So this will just be your standard NC flywheel dimension. Obviously it's a flex plate, but they're the same. And that came out to, from my measurement, about 11 3/8. So that leaves me with needing a .338 spacer about, and it'll need to have 1/2-inch holes on it. Man, that's a noisy car. So we'll just need to put a spacer on here. Once again, I'd like to recap how much I seem to hate myself, because if I would have done a little more research, reflecting back on the previous video, I wouldn't have gone with the clutch kit that I have, because it would have been easier to get one of those extremely high-rated X-clutch units and been able to use a stock starter. But again, I've now committed to this. The car's already together. I've already bought the clutch and stuff. So learn from me. Meanwhile, with the previous portion where I said that I needed a spacer, I went ahead and 3D printed some spacers to the dimensions I needed. We're going to go ahead and slip those guys onto the starter, and I hope this fits. Took a little bit of super glue and I glued my little spacers in there. These aren't my permanent ones. These are just to figure out if it works. I already stuffed this in there. It physically fits, so I'll probably leave this in there until I can power it up and test it. I don't want to spin the motor over with no oil in it, of course. Well, it's installed for now. Okay, so I've gotten my little aluminum spacers in. I drilled them out to 1/2 inch on the inside so they fit. They are exactly 3/8 inch thick, and I'm not going to worry about squaring off the other edges because they are really not going to affect how it mounts, but the thing's about 1 inch diameter, so let's go install these in the car. Starter installed. I'm excited. It's in there. It's secure. Now I can put on the intake manifold. Intake manifold is now installed. Look at that thing. It looks awesome. Making some more progress today. We've rounded all the edges on this because they were really sharp. There was an M8 right here, so I went ahead and made a symmetric M8 riv nut here, and I put one at the front center. I wanted to put 2 at the front center, but there's clearance over here and not clearance over here. Either way, I'm happy with how this came out. I did a crap job with that bottom right hole. You know, whatever. Check this out. That goes in nicely. And then you stick your 3 bolts in there. Let's see, 3 bolts, long one in the front. And then after I get this painted, I also wanted to like remove some of the center console stuff and then paint some of these edges I've cut. Once all that's done, I will insert foam along like the back side of this to where it just fills up this gap here and over there, and then we'll put foam down up here and around here as well. So that'll be as sealed as possible. I was also thinking about making some sort of like rubber bib around this, something in order to give this as much seal as possible. So next thing is I realized I completely overlooked it, but the the shape of this actually interferes over here. Total oversight on my side, but the good news is I can actually just slim out this side, and I can shorten the length of these like this structure here. I can modify all that stuff and just use smaller bolts. Again, oversight on my side. I don't know how I missed that one, but let's see. Oh, I also moved the e-brake, so now it's actually more to the right. So now we have the e-brake like it should be. So I had unbolted it, I ground that hole out, I moved it over, and I bolted it back down. So let's get this thing in here real quick. It looks like I've been really damaging up the e-brake handle by installing this so many times, so we're probably going to end up having to get another e-brake handle, or at least the cover piece. So this guy going in here, we're going to have to mess with that wiring and this wiring over here. So I'm going to work on the mounting solution for this now. Mounted up my fuel pressure regulator. I needed to make these little spacers here so it would clear the wiring harness, but I just had to drill an extra hole here and over drill this hole. Now this thing fits nicely over here and securely. That'll make for nice routing as well. Okay, so I'm moving backwards on progress here. I took the fuel pump system assembly back out, and I had come up with an idea to go ahead and just run 2 AN adapters like that. The problem with this is that they start interfering. In the normal orientation that you install this, this is the front of the car, that's the rear, and obviously I chopped off the factory fitting and I just put the AN there. I had to do a little bit of modification there to fit the nut. But check this out. So because of that orientation, the float was ending up over here, pointing into the side of the tank, so it wasn't going to be able to go up. So what I did is, I took this hat off, I took the little clips out of here, which was a real pain, and then I just rotated this 180, so now this will sit backwards, the float will go where it needs to over here, and these 2 fittings will go over, so I can actually get the AN fittings here, and they'll go over that little lip piece here. That was the whole problem. See, I have no problem running this way for any other reason. It's just when you go to try to put the AN fitting on there, you can't tighten them since there's like a lip pressed up under it. Either way, I'm gonna go throw this in the car now, so I'm satisfied with this. I also had to switch my lines, so now a different one is in and a different one is out, but just write it on the lid. Got it installed into the car, as you can see. The fittings would have been over here, but since I'd put the hat 180 out, we're over here. Another thing I found out, this top hat piece is actually, this top hat lid thingy is actually sided. So these 2 holes have no bolts in them because there's no hole, or the bolt hole doesn't line up. So, I mean, 6 is fine. I'm going to leave it with 6. And then I marked on the lid which one's the out and which one's the in, since now you just couldn't tell, could you? Not until you turn the pump on. And then since there's plenty of pigtail here, we can still just plug it in. All right, now I'm going to run my lines to the surge tank. I now successfully run the lines, so I got my 2 6AN PTFE lines running, and if you see, that's them over there. So obviously we have the out and the in. It doesn't matter which one's which here nor over there, but it's nice to know, so that's why I have the arrows here. The reason it doesn't matter is because in the surge tank, the line that enters, all it does is just fill the whole tank, and then the line that returns, it's pretty much just an overflow and it comes back. So we have the 2 lines here. We will have one more that comes back from the return from the front. I can go ahead and reinstall the screws here, and I'm going to go ahead and put the lid back on here. I honestly don't remember where I left off in the last section of the video. It's been a minute. So let's go over what I've at least accomplished in the last couple of days that I can remember. I've assembled all of that stuff back there. I found a nicer bracket for the grounding on the back side of the head. I've installed that. So that allowed me to install the rest of this stuff. AC and heater lines are run across. The heater line, what I usually do in these cars is I'll take a 3/4 hose and I'll just run that straight from here down to the thermostat. That keeps it nice and clean. We also down here have a nipple plug right there for that line that would normally run to the throttle body. Mounted up the power steering pump. I've decided that I need to get this line lengthened, customized, so I can leave this space open. That's where my 3-inch intake is going to have to go out, so that needs to be available. I've got my coolant tee ready to go here. Obviously there is nothing in here. I removed the radiator. I'll get to that in a moment. I've mounted my MAC valve over here, and I've already run this line down here. This little guy right here is the speed sensor for the turbo. I've done some really nice heat shielding. We actually did the same thing for a customer, so I went ahead and did it for myself as well. It was something that was on my checklist. Make some sort of heat shield to go between the turbo and the charge pipe. So the charge pipe will be in this area. Obviously there's the turbo outlet. Got this coolant line done. It's here. The oil line for the turbo actually goes around the back of the heat shield, so that's nice as well. Unfortunately, due to using the aluminum valve cover, I should have whacked this entirely flush, because now I can't get this guy over here to the stud. So it'll just have to hang out there. That's fine though. Let's see, so I'll need to run all that wiring and nonsense. Let's see, over here we have finished the fuel line for the return. That actually completes the fuel line short of the one in the trunk, which I'll show in a moment. I'm going to run this line straight off of the booster. I'm going to use the other one to go to my... I'm going to use the booster line is going to come straight off the manifold, and I'm going to use the other nipple here to go straight over to my vacuum block. I'm not sure where I'm going to put this yet, because there's going to be so much stuff going on. Down here, I've removed my steering rack. I'm going to go ahead and replace it, because I noticed it was leaking out of a boot over here. So I'm going to replace that. I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to get new end links for it, new tie rod ends for it. I've decided on the intercooler. I'm going to go ahead and sell this intercooler. I got to buy a core. I got to buy another one of these that has a 2.5, so that way I can make a different intercooler for this guy. I want to go, not necessarily bigger, but I want to go with bigger on the outlet for sure. That'll give me the opportunity to modify a couple of things. Alright, so let's look inside. If you've seen some of my posts, you know that I developed a giant radiator fan system for these guys. So I have the CSF 42mm radiator. This is the CSF 42mm prototype fan shroud. So this guy is not powder coated. The ones that are in production, I went ahead and got those powder coated, and I lasered my logo into them. Let's see. Oh, I got my rotary tronics gauge in. I need to install that guy into the gauge cluster. Speaking of gauges, I got these guys in here. This is a powder coated piece of aluminum. I'll probably end up taking this guy back out and lasering wording above it, so you know that this is the turbo RPM and this is the SCG1 boost controller, etc., etc. This is just temporarily mounted. I've ordered the hardware to mount this. I decided I'm going to do vertical mount with spacers. So once that stuff comes in, that'll go in. Let's take a peek in the trunk. Oh, hey, look here. I have my condenser in my LRB under tray, and I have a couple of my fan shrouds. The only line that is left here is the one that goes from here. These guys, I wanted to shorten these guys. Still haven't gotten around to that because, you know, life gets in the way. Okay, so my battery was installed, and right after it got installed, someone came in and wanted the battery kit immediately, and they ended up buying that one, so I'm on hold again. It's okay. Let's get under the car now and take a look. I went ahead and temporarily stuffed some parts up in here, some washers up in here to hold the transmission up so I could remove the jack and work under here comfortably. So if we slide on over here, what I've done is I have secured all of the fuel lines and the power line for the battery relocation. I actually redid the battery relocation stuff on this because this is the first car I did battery relocation on, and I mean, it was my first job. It was pretty poorly done. So now that we have a really nice process and all that stuff, I went ahead and redid all of that. You'll notice my Mad Fabworks perch is missing. Someone came in and wanted one ASAP. I told them the only one is that one. Well, it's sold. So once those come back in, should be this next week, then I reconnect all this stuff and we'll have one again. It's such as supply and demand. Again, my car can wait, so it'll be okay. But the lines run back here. I'm going to make some sort of shield for these, something to go under here so it's not just out in the open. I had enough length and, of course, agility of the lines of the power cable to run it up and over like I normally do, but not of these lines. So again, I'll just make a little shield for that guy. Let's see. Nothing to see over here, really. I do need to do the heat shield right here, and then I'll be ready to put in my downpipe. That looks kind of about The starter is of course connected because that was part of the battery relocation. I will need to put in the brace that holds up the intake manifold. I've got my new power steering rack and I've installed it. I want to show you the silly stuff that I'm going through to try and make stuff work here. So initially I tried using an offset 3-inch coupler for the turbo over here, and it didn't clear. It was too pinched up against the alternator, because once I connected the connectors, it was starting to make it non-round. So I wouldn't be able to get anything on there. Well, I went ahead and got I believe this is a 60-degree coupler, and with a 60-degree coupler, I was able to cut it really short. It doesn't matter that it deforms a little around the base, but now I have a full 3-inch round here. I can just use another angle and get it to come out over here. Now normally, this power steering line, this portion is straight. So what I've done is, I obviously bent the crap out of that, so that's, you know, now going up. And then I bent this a little bit, I twisted this a little bit, so this was going in here, since after you bend it, you know, it ends up pointing this way a little bit. So I've twisted a little bit, and then obviously I bent this up here. I used a bender tool I have. So now we get to go ahead and install all the radiator and nonsense, and then we get to figure out just how the hell I'm gonna get a 3-inch pipe from there through here and out the side here. Let's go with the radiator. I've been making a whole bunch of progress this week, so let's take a look. I found out that my Mad Fabworks power steering tank can't fit because, well, you see that part that I had to break? That's why. Apparently the CSF 42mm radiator and my fan shroud assembly makes this too aggressive. I don't plan on keeping this, but at least I put it in here for now. I think I'm going to end up mounting that guy like over to the side, where I'll have space. This is temporarily mounted here. Obviously I need to mount it here. I relocated this. This was going around the back side. This is one of the coolant lines for the turbo. It was going around the back. Now it goes through the second position, so it can reach up here to this coolant line. I need to hook that guy up. Got all my coolant lines installed. This is simply just sitting here. I'll get that out of the way. So I have misplaced my bracket for my ECU, so that's not going in just yet. Let's go down to the underside where I've done more fun stuff. I've gotten my steering rack replaced. It's installed. I've got new outer tie rods as well. Those I just installed, looking great. Now the condenser, the radiator, the fan, all that stuff is installed. Awesome. Now, let's slide on under. I finished up the heat shielding for the transmission tunnel, and I installed my downpipe. So that's all in there now. Oh, and I've also gotten my rotary Tronics unit in for the gauge cluster, and I finished the wiring portion, but I'm waiting on one more piece to come in before I actually install the gauge cluster. Meanwhile, it is it's that bundle of nonsense over there. So I chose to get myself a power steering cooler. I've been seeing some of my customers come in with boiling over power steering fluid, so I've been recommending these guys. I got the 1403 model by Hayden. It's a small transmission cooler, but also works for your power steering. Let's see, this is the smaller one. There's this guy. It's not huge, but this is a heck of a lot better than the stock system. So I'm going to install this guy, and we shouldn't have any boilover problems in the future. Like, no matter what I do with it, right? And then it just comes with some BS for mounting it if you so choose. I'm going to wiring up a switch panel for this gauge set here. We have a turbo tachometer, and we have a boost controller wideband. This goes in place of the radio for my NC Miata. And I have it set up, so let's go ahead and add 13 volts. So go ahead and hit power. So this lights up. We have 13.4 volts according to that. It says 13.3 here. So I've wired these two up, so the left switch turns on the one, and then the right switch turns on the other. Check that out. This week. So I've got all of these guys running down through a hole that I made in the firewall there with a little grommet. I had to de-pin this connector in order to get it through. But let's see, I got the O2 sensor, the speed sensor for the turbo, the boost controller, and then also the map sensor, which will go over there. Now all that stuff is run in to here now. Got a mess of wires down there. Those gauges are good to go. These now have these two little red wires down here. One controls one controls the other, and those just simply clip into the back of one of these switches. So all that's good to go. I gotta fix this connector, and I'm gonna make it actually just connect into this for easy access. So that's all for that. Now let's run around to the trunk. I took care of wiring today in the trunk. I redid my wiring for the relay here since I got these nice leash relays that I'm using on all my fan kits. I had these laying around. I made some nice wiring sets. I got my ground over here. Look at that, I braided it. That's my ground for both of these fuel pumps, and then I got both of these red ones braided together. Those are going here. Then I have a trigger wire, which is going to run up to the switch panel up front once that's taken care of, and it has a local ground here. I'm going to run a power over once I get the battery assembly in here. So I just got another shipment of Mad Fabworks purchase. Got mine assembled, ready to go. So you'll see I got the rotary tronics sensor over here. I believe it's a Bosch PSTF1. So it's got the pressure and temperature built into one. This is my oil feed that I use for my turbo with a 90, because the starter is obviously right here above it. So this will be 90'd off, go around the back side of the engine. Then obviously I have my oil in and out, and I don't use this port. The idea of having 2 ports, I believe, was so you could have a pressure sensor and a temperature sensor, but if I'm running a 2-in-1, then I don't need it. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get that guy installed. Then we can work on doing the oil cooler lines. Well, I have to get an oil cooler installed first too. So I have some other stuff I'd like to show in the trunk. So I have the wires going around back here, grounded up here. I have this wire going around here. I have my breaker back over here. And then I actually did 2 power wires coming out of it. One of them comes up through here, and I ran it through and down into here. This is my power for my fuel pumps. So now I have the switch here, and the wiring, obviously, like I said, it'll go to the front whenever that's done. I did take care of getting my catch can mounted. I'm missing one of these fittings. It'll be coming in shortly because these come with 12 AN fittings on them, and obviously I'm running 10 AN lines. So whenever that comes in, I'll have that line connected. Meanwhile, the hoses are at least connected and routed. I also have taken care of mounting up my vacuum block over here. I put 2 little pieces of aluminum over here, and I just hard mounted it to the tower bar, where the tower bar would go. I've got 3 of these things actually hooked up. I need to mount this guy over here still, and then one of these will stay free until I actually get my blow off, because this will have to go to where the blow off is, wherever it ends up. I've installed the rotary tronics gauge. It's now in there. I've got power to everything. Everything's hooked up in the back as well, powered up. I temporarily hooked this up. I made myself a little 2-pin connector for the power that goes to this. So let's test everything. All right, so the power here works. The rotary tronics gauge is lit up, as you can see. Now let's test some gauges. I don't remember what I plugged into what. Oh, fuel pumps work. There we go, that one works. I may need to get a better ground for this, I guess. I chose a thing under here. It may not have an actual grounding to it. So I'll verify that in a moment. Meanwhile, that guy works. This is awesome. Oh, I also ran the wire through the firewall for the rotary tronics gauge, so that's actually hooked up, and the Mad Fabworks perch is now installed. Okay, it's fixed. It was one of these connectors. I mean, I got this knockoff Deutsch connector kit, so no surprise, it pulled out from behind here, so I fixed it. Now it works. I spent a little bit of time in the trunk today getting these lines cleaned up, so now both of those lines run around the back, and I got the fuel filter sitting there, so that'll be out of the way. It leaves us a little bit of trunk room for, you know, our long road trips in this thing that will never be taken. I just need to secure this down so this guy doesn't move anywhere, but I'm happy with how this came out. That looks pretty all right.